Happy New Year and a very warm welcome to World Connect, your journey of the world in 30 minutes. The year gone by saw reverses suffered by terror groups in Iraq and Syria. US President Barack Obama vowed to take unilateral action to tackle the problem of gun violence in the wake of several mass shootings in the United States, and floods wreaked havoc in UK and the Americas. We will tell you all that and more in this year's first edition of World Connect. I'm Munmun Bhattacharya, and let's set the ball rolling with the focus of the show. World welcomes 2016 with festivities and fireworks. New Zealand was one of the first countries to ring in the new year. Auckland, London, Russia, Dubai and Brazil extend a festive embrace to the new year. The city of Ramadi in Iraq recaptured from ISIS by security forces, but the battle for Ramadi isn't over yet. The terror group continues to be present in parts of the city. South Korea and Japan reach an agreement to resolve the issue of reparation to Korean sex slaves tortured by Japanese soldiers during World War II. Korean survivors say the deal is not enough and want Japan to do more. El Nino weather phenomenon causes floods in UK and torrential rains in parts of South America. Over 150,000 people displaced across Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay and Uruguay. At 100, Eileen Kramer vows all with her dancing moves in Australia. The centenarian has starred in a music video and toured New Zealand, South Africa and India with her dancing troupe. After an eventful 2015, the world welcomed the new year with pomp, gaiety and anticipation. New Zealand was the first to ring it in. It welcomed 2016 with a fireworks display at Auckland's Sky Tower. The London Eye provided the backdrop to a stunning fireworks display as thousands of people gathered along the banks of the River Thames to usher in the start of the new year. Russia welcomed 2016 with fireworks display over Moscow's Red Square. Fireworks lit up the midnight sky across Dubai as thousands of revelers celebrated the new year. A glittering fireworks show was held at the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest tower, which was fitted with hundreds of thousands of LED lights. And over 2 million flocked to Rio de Janeiro's Copacabana beach to watch a 16-minute fireworks display celebrating the Brazilian city's Olympic year. In a major success in the anti-ISIS campaign in Iraq, the city of Ramadi was recaptured by security forces on Sunday. That turning point came over 6 months after it had fallen to the Islamic State. But the battle for Ramadi isn't over yet, because the terror group is still present in parts of the city.
The ruins of Ramadi, the Iraqi city reclaimed in good measure by Iraqi federal forces on Sunday. And Iraq's national flag hoisted over Ramadi's government compound to mark Iraqi military's first major win over the ISIS. A triumphant Iraqi prime minister visited the city a day after federal forces announced its recapture.
2016, God willing, will be the year of the great victory and the year of final victory and the end of the presence of Daesh on Iraqi soil.
But for Ramadi, liberation from ISIS control is still a work in progress. An assessment by the US-led coalition targeting Daesh says that about 700 Islamic State fighters are still believed to be hiding in the center and eastern outskirts of Ramadi. The Iraqi army launched a new offensive on Thursday to recapture the remaining Ramadi neighborhoods still held by the terror group. Even in areas recaptured by security forces, conditions are not yet conducive for tens of thousands of displaced residents to return. Ramadi continues to be a war zone. Much of the city still needs to be cleared of explosives laid by the terrorists who seized the city in May. Infantry used small arms fire to target terrorist positions and tanks to detonate buildings thought to be hiding improvised explosive devices.
There was a car bomb in one of the houses which was prepared to blow up on the security forces. While they were clearing out districts of Ramadi, we detected the car bomb, we destroyed it using an Abrams tank, and we killed all the members of the enemy who were inside it.
The recapture of Ramadi by the Iraqi army comes after months of cautious advance backed by US-led coalition's airstrikes. The first big victory against Daesh since it swept through a third of Iraq in mid-2014. But local officials face a raft of challenges in rebuilding the ruined city. As per a UN estimate, initial reconstruction needs in Ramadi require about $20 million. But longer-term outlay could be much more for a city battered by US airstrikes and terrorist explosives over the past 6 months. After entering Ramadi, Iraqi forces freed dozens of families from the hands of the terrorists who intended to use them as human shields. Many of them now live in a refugee camp in Anbar province. Like in every tragedy, even this has a human face. From living through atrocities at the hands of Daesh to being in a safer neighborhood, these refugees have been through a nightmare. Scarred, but happy to be alive, they are high on hope. All they want is a home to call their own and a lasting sense of security.
While security forces continue their offensive against the Islamic State in Iraq, those fighting terror groups in Syria too achieved a breakthrough. At least one village in Aleppo province in northern Syria has been seized from terrorists by US-backed alliance of Syrian Kurdish and Arab fighters. Fighters from the Democratic Forces of Syria seized the village of Tanab near the town of Azaz. The alliance had earlier seized a dam from Islamic State further east, cutting one of its main supply routes across the Euphrates. While security forces continue to make gains in Iraq and Syria against the Islamic State, the regressive face of the terror group has been revealed yet again. In a sickening attempt to justify the rape and torture of its captives, the Islamic State has issued a fatwa. This fatwa lists 15 guidelines with explicit instructions for those keeping sex slaves on the do's and don'ts of having sex with them. The document was part of a huge trove of documents that was captured by the US Special Operations Forces in Syria in May. Is an apology enough for years of the worst form of sexual torture that was accompanied by beating and starvation? The answer is a resounding no. The ordeal of those women who served as sex slaves to Japanese soldiers during the Second World War will make you cringe. They say no remorse can heal their wounds.
They are old and fragile. They know their days are numbered, but death is not what they fear. For at some point, they had wished for it. Stripped of their dignity, they were raped, multiple times by multiple men. An ordeal that they lived through every single day. As if that wasn't enough, they were beaten, tortured, and even starved. They are the comfort women, a euphemism for women who served as sex slaves to Japanese soldiers during the Second World War.
I was become so sick after electric shock and all the beatings and torture.
Some as young as 14 were forced out of their homes to serve in military brothels. Today, not many live to narrate the stories of abuse and brutality. The numbers are still debated, but some estimates say there have been as many as 2 lakh Korean victims. Only 238 dared to come forward, and only 46 still survive. Many chose silence for the fear of shame. South Korea and Japan have reached a landmark agreement to resolve the issue that has long plagued ties between the neighbors.
As Prime Minister of Japan, Prime Minister Abe expresses anew his most sincere apologies and remorse to all the women who underwent immeasurable and painful experiences and suffered incurable physical and psychological wounds as comfort women.
The apology was followed by a promise of an $8.3 million fund to help former comfort women. This is not the first. Japan had apologized in 1993 for the wrongs of the past. The latest agreement, though welcomed by both countries, has not gone down well with the survivors, who want Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to apologize in person. A potent symbol of Japan's wartime aggression sits a bronze statue facing Tokyo's embassy in Seoul, a key factor to resolving the issue. Every Wednesday for more than 2 decades, the aging women have gathered outside the Japanese embassy in Seoul around the statue. Japan's wartime atrocities were not just limited to Korea. Women were taken from China, the Philippines and other territories throughout Asia. Taiwan too has urged Japan to apologize and compensate for its comfort women. For the Korean survivors, the deal is just not enough. They want Japan to do more, but what remains to be seen is whether they will live to see it.
Living on the edge. That's what journalists do in war zones, even in peacetime. Over 100 journalists were killed in 2015, 67 in the line of duty, and the others because of reasons that are still not clear. No prizes for guessing that Iraq and Syria were the two countries that were deadliest for journalists.
Syrian journalist and filmmaker Naji Jerf was killed in a Turkish town near the Syrian border last week. Jerf had documented atrocities by the Islamic State in Syria and trained hundreds of citizen journalists. Rights activists called the killing an assassination. Jerf's killing is the latest one in the year 2015, which saw killings of over 100 journalists. International Monitor, Reporters Without Borders, in a report made a shocking revelation saying a total of 110 journalists were killed in connection with their work or for unclear reasons in 2015. The report says 67 journalists were targeted because of their work or were killed while reporting. Reasons for the killings of the other 43 are still unconfirmed. Country-wise, Iraq turned out to be the deadliest for journalists, as the maximum number of 11 scribes were murdered in the largely conflict-hit nation. Iraqi city of Mosul saw the largest number of atrocities, abductions and killings of journalists and citizen journalists. Syria was the second most dangerous, with 10 killings, where Aleppo city became a minefield for journalists. Since the Syrian conflict began in 2011, the report says journalists end up as collateral victims, being taken hostage by Islamic State or other groups. France, which saw killings of 8 journalists, was ranked third. The January attack on Charlie Hebdo contributed to the soaring number. This year's figures have a reversing trend as compared to that of last year, that 2/3 of the journalists were killed in countries at peace.
If you look at the figures, you see that whereas 2/3 of the journalists killed last year were in war zones, in countries at war, this year 2/3 were killed in countries at peace, countries where there is no war, where journalists are deliberately targeted, and the numbers prove it.
The report also talks about journalists being imprisoned or held hostage. According to the document, in 2015, 153 journalists were detained, while 54 were held hostage. Calling for giving better protection to journalists, the Monitor has made recommendations to the United Nations. It has urged the world body to create a position of special representative of the Secretary General for the safety of journalists. It has also appealed to the UN Security Council to refer war crimes against journalists to the International Criminal Court.
The Paris terror attacks, the investigations that followed and vigilance to preempt more attacks like Paris meant Europe welcomed the new year under a state of heightened alert. Germany received a tip hours before midnight on Friday that militants from Iraq and Syria were planning New Year attacks in Munich. The police on Friday lifted the terror alert hours after evacuating the key train stations over fears that jihadists were planning a New Year suicide bomb assault. In Belgium, authorities on Wednesday called off the usual New Year's Eve fireworks display in the capital, citing fears of a possible attack. Meanwhile, Belgium has arrested the 10th suspect in Paris attacks investigation. Weather too played a dampener to New Year celebrations, with the United Kingdom witnessing the wettest December in more than a century. Floods caused by heavy rain and rising water levels brought by Storm Frank battered northern England and Scotland across the last week. Prime Minister David Cameron dismissed suggestions of a north-south divide on government spending on flood defences, saying it had committed to spending $3.4 billion over the next 6 years and would consider doing more. The El Nino factor was responsible for the flooding in UK, and it is being seen as a major reason for the changing weather pattern across continents, including the Americas. More on this in America Chronicles. The world's weather turned wild over the last week with devastating storms, tornadoes and wildfires wreaking havoc across the globe. El Nino triggered torrential rainfall in parts of South America, displacing more than 150,000 people across Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay and Uruguay. Paraguay is the hardest hit, with more than 130,000 people evacuated. Parts of the US Midwest brought in 2016 cleaning up after floods swamped homes and businesses. Missouri suffered one of the worst floods in history in recent days. In Texas, tornadoes killed at least 11 people and damaged about 1,600 structures and homes. Even as most parts battled floods and storms, Colombia was on alert for the uptick in forest fires spreading throughout the country. That again was a consequence of drought brought on by the El Nino phenomenon. And if you are wondering what El Nino is, it is a naturally occurring weather episode which happens every 2 to 7 years. It is a climate cycle in the Pacific Ocean with a global impact on weather patterns. NASA has warned that the worst of El Nino is yet to come. It says its biggest impact on the US is expected to hit early in the new year, and that the current El Nino is on track to rival or even surpass the biggest one ever recorded, and that was in the winter of 1997-98. The debate over gun control in the United States has raged on for years together. Finally, restrictions look set to unfold. US President Barack Obama has said that he will take unilateral action to tackle the problem of gun violence in the country. Obama admonished US Congress on its failure to act on reforms and said that he had directed the White House to take new steps to address what he called the epidemic of gun violence. Frustrated with little action from the US Congress, Barack Obama has vowed to use whatever power his office holds to put in place gun control measures via executive action.
10% for the very first time.
It's democracy in action and hope for better health in Afroscope. The Central African Republic went to polls on Wednesday with a hope that the elections will bring stability after years of sectarian violence. The National Election Authority will announce the preliminary results in the coming days, which will then have to be confirmed by the country's constitutional court to become official. 30 candidates were in the fray for presidency. Central African Republic has been rocked by unrest since March 2013, when a largely Muslim alliance of rebel groups known as the Seleka overthrew President Francois Bozize. Sectarian violence has continued ever since, displacing nearly 1 million people. The World Health Organization declared Guinea Ebola-free on Tuesday. The announcement came 42 days after the last person confirmed with the virus, a baby girl named Nubia, tested negative for a second time. The West African country now enters a 90-day period of heightened surveillance. The world's worst outbreak of the disease began in eastern Guinea in December 2013. It then spread to Liberia, Sierra Leone and 7 other countries. In all, more than 11,300 people have died. Before heading on to the world of entertainment, here's a quick look at some more stories that made headlines across the globe. In Showbuzz this week, we bring you tributes to Grammy winner Natalie Cole of Unforgettable with Love fame and Lemmy, the frontman for heavy metal band Motorhead, and tell you what joy the deadly duo of Jennifer Lawrence and David Russell have in store for you.
Let there be, let there be love, yeah.
Grammy-winning singer Natalie Cole, the daughter of Nat King Cole, died at the age of 65. Cole died from congestive heart failure following complications from a kidney transplant and hepatitis C diagnosed in 2008. Her career reached the superstar level in 1991 when she recorded Unforgettable with Love, an album of songs related to her father. Music stars and celebrities have paid tribute to Motorhead frontman Ian Lemmy Kilmister. Lemmy, the frontman for heavy metal band Motorhead, breathed his last on Tuesday. He was 70 and was recently diagnosed with an aggressive cancer. Lemmy formed Motorhead in 1975 and was its only constant member as singer and bassist. The band released 23 studio albums and are best known for their 1980 single Ace of Spades. Jennifer Lawrence and director David O. Russell reunite for the third time with the new movie Joy. Expected to bring Lawrence a fourth Oscar nomination in as many years, it is inspired by the true story of Joy Mangano, the New York inventor of the miracle mop who overcame an early divorce and life as a single mother to become a successful 1990s businesswoman.
Joy? I pick up the gun.
Christmas has just gone by and the tinkling of bells is still echoing in our ears. Just imagine what would happen if the art of making bells were to die. It was on the verge of extinction in the European capital of bells in Portugal. But heave a sigh of relief, bells won't stop enchanting you because UNESCO has come to the rescue.
The herd quietly graze on the green meadows, the silence occasionally broken by the soothing sound of tiny bells tied across their neck.
I love this noise. I feel good when I hear the sound of my sheep's bells. I might be on a hill a kilometre away and it feels as if they're near me. It's a wonderful sound.
The distinctive bells, a craft integral to Portugal, is now a dying art. The inhabitants of Alcacoas, the main centre for manufacture of bells, took great pride in this heritage, but today there aren't many takers.
Alcaçovas is the European capital of bells. There used to be about 16 manufacturers here. Nowadays, we're the last one. The secret of a good bell is to know how to make it, but it's also to know how to tune it up. A bell badly tuned is useless.
The craft is nearly 1,000 years old. Iron and brass bells are molded in a mixture of earth and straw and baked at a very high temperature. One school, each bell is fine-tuned by the master bell maker. Traditionally, the technical expertise is transmitted within the family from fathers to sons, but Francisca is one woman who has been practicing this craft for the last 40 years.
These little bells were almost extinct. Nobody made them anymore because they weren't profitable. But me, I told myself that we couldn't let the craft die out. I like doing it. It moves me to contribute to this craft. That's all. That's how we managed to save the bells from disappearance.
The practice is increasingly becoming unsustainable due to recent socio-economic changes. And in an effort to save it from being extinct, UNESCO has recently added it to its intangible cultural heritage. With the international agency pitching to safeguard the craft, people are hoping the sound will continue to enchant them for years to come.
That's one way to preserve culture. But can you imagine putting on your dancing shoes at 100? Believe it or not, Ilian Kramer has crossed 100, but her dance moves are as gracious as they used to be, say, when she was 35. So is dancing the secret of her longevity? Hear her reveal her secret.
Age is just a number for Ilian Kramer. Despite having crossed 100,
Kramer continues to follow her passion, and though each day only adds to her age, she is determined not to give up dancing.
I've never given up dancing because I really love doing it.
At this age, she has starred in a music video and is probably the oldest working dancer and choreographer in Australia, if not the world.
I'm liberated. I don't have to be 35 all the time.
What's even more interesting about the fact that she dances at this age is the way she dances with soft and sinuous gestures.
As you get older, I suppose, from my point of view, I'm more interested now in less physical and more expression.
Though she always dreamt of being an opera singer, she got drawn to dancing after seeing a performance by Sydney's Bodenweiser Ballet, run by Viennese immigrant Madame Gertrude Bodenweiser. Since then, there has been no looking back. Kramer has toured Australia, New Zealand, South Africa and India with the troupe before setting up her own. She stays in touch with modern life using a mobile phone and has used Facebook. When asked the secret to her longevity, she says she doesn't smoke, drink or chase women.
This brings us to the end of this edition of World Connect. Your feedback has been encouraging and overwhelming, so do keep writing to us at our email ID, which is worldconnect@ddnews@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Facebook. But before we say goodbye, take a look at how cheerleaders, brass bands and mini steam trains took to the streets in London as part of a New Year parade. We'll leave you with these celebrations. Goodbye. Thanks for watching.
To see Les Mis. Isn't it fantastic?